Hey everyone, I'm Genevieve Morrone and I am the founder of Genevieve Morrone Yoga and Fitness Coaching. And thanks for joining me today for this live event where we are going to hash into all things you need to know and my top tips for beginning yoga practice, especially from home. This can all apply to being in a studio as well when we're back in person and seeing each other again. But my big passion is teaching you how you can implement practices at home to see progress and see the results that you're looking for from your yoga practice and from your fitness practice as well. So if yoga has been something you have been wanting to get into, but just aren't sure how, or you're not sure that it's for you or what to do, and you just kind of admire people and Instagrammers from afar, then just know that the number one rule in yoga is it is for everybody. Anyone can do yoga, whether you are super fit, whether you're super not fit, unhealthy, healthy, lean, overweight, injured. There is some aspect of yoga that you can do. So just know that. And when I started out, I had no idea what to expect. And some of you might even be in that boat as well. You might think that, oh, I have to be super flexible and I have to, have all the equipment and the right clothes. That's all bogus. You don't need a lot of that. And we will go into that in great detail today. But I remember my first yoga class, and it was at a gym where a lot of people try yoga for the first time. And I actually was teaching yoga at a gym before COVID hit. And I took a lot of pride in it because I saw a lot of new beginners and knew that I could have an influence on their practice. But my first practice that I did, I had no clue what I was doing. I stayed at the back of the room. My friend and I came, and we actually got kicked out of the class because we were giggling away. We took it too lighthearted. It's just yoga. But I quickly learned that you can't base it off of one class. You really have to kind of dabble into all the different realms. And that's what makes yoga so cool, is it isn't just one set practice. There are so many different varieties to it, just like there is with fitness and exercise. So you really got to find that fit that works for you. So today what we're going to go through is 6 different tips that I have for beginners starting out their yoga practice to help keep you successful and just to give you a starting point, things to remember as well as you're heading into the practice. So number one is, I kind of dived into a little bit of it already, is not all yoga is the same. Don't judge yoga based off of your first class like I did. There are so many different types. So depending on what you want out of your practice, there is a style of yoga for you. So whether you want to build strength, you can do a more strength-based or a power yoga or an Ashtanga-based practice where you're using a lot of focus and muscle and endurance in the poses. And even if you consider yourself a fairly strong person, you will find new muscles by incorporating a yoga practice. There's also restorative types of yoga, complementary types of yoga that can really help in your training and fitness routines that you're doing already. So yin yoga is where we hold poses for a long period of time, usually minutes, like 5 to 7 minutes each for each pose. And that's to really allow the body to get deep into that fascial tissue that surrounds the joints, because this fascia just wraps so tightly around the joints and it needs time to release. It needs time for the brain to really penetrate and say, it's okay, you can release now. You don't have to be in defense mode all the time. And when we get super stiff and we don't work on the mobility aspect of yoga or within our training regimes, that's where pain can come in. That's where plateaus can come in, lack of performance or bettering our performance, as well as injury can come into play as well. Okay, so there's so many different aspects depending on what your training goals are. A lot of people go into yoga to for pain relief. So even just doing some gentle stretches, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be a set out sequence. There are certain practices that do lay out a foundation of sequences and you repeat them class after class, like Ashtanga yoga that's where my training was in, and that's where I learned my strong yoga foundation. But I grew to learn that, that's not always for everybody. And there's other components of yoga that can work for you, even if it's just picking out a few different stretches and doing them, focusing on the breath and bringing that meditative quality into it. As long as you're linking the movement to the breath. So the breath is the guide, okay? Not the movement. The breath is the guide in the pose. And if you've lost the breath, you've lost the yoga. So in yoga, you'll often hear a lot of focus and a lot of teachings about the breath and really tuning into the breath. That can be really new for a lot of people, especially if you have not paid any attention to your breath for your entire life. So I've taught students in their 50s, 60s who are learning to breathe for the very first time. It's pretty fascinating. So not all yoga is the same. The main important thing is just pick a style, pick a class and try it. Just start somewhere. And you can even do your research and find out all the different types of yoga and dabble with them. And with us all at home right now, you can look online for free classes. I have a ton of classes on my YouTube channel. I'll post the link below after the live. And just play with the different styles and types, as well as the different teachers that are out there, because one teacher might not speak to you, but another one might. Like, I might not be your jam, I might be, and that's okay. That's why there's variety, and that's why there's so much out there. But I want to really take the overwhelm out of it for you. So try some of my classes, see what you think, and then until you can find that style that you like, then you can branch out from there. But just start. It doesn't have to be complicated. Next thing, you don't focus on the outcome. And this is still hooked on to not all yoga is the same. So a lot of times people will have a preconceived idea coming into a yoga practice, thinking, I can't do this, I'm not good enough at this, I'm not flexible, I'm not strong. Don't focus on the outcome. Yoga is not about a goal. And any experienced yogi will tell you, and any experienced sages from years and years and years ago who passed yoga down to all of us will say that there is no endpoint in yoga. That is why it's called a journey. It's called a practice for a reason. We're not achieving, a certain pose or flexibility. And I can tell you, in the beginning, I kind of had that ego mentality where I thought, oh, I'm gonna be doing this pose, and I want to do full wheel pose and bow pose perfectly, and it's gonna look beautiful and exuberant. But let me tell you, when you actually get to that so-called goal, it doesn't mean anything. Like there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's no great enlightenment. It really is just it's the pose. And when you hit that point, well, then you move on to the next level. So it's really about embracing the journey with where you're at, and be humble with yourself. Leave the ego at the door and just meet yourself on your mat with where you are today. We all start somewhere, right? So just take notice, be kind, be compassionate with yourself, put in the work, put in the focus and the effort, and don't attach stories to how good or not good that you think you are, because that's all self-sabotaging, toxic thoughts that isn't serving you in the end. Okay. If you have any questions, please drop them below as well. I'd love to answer them. And if questions come up throughout the live, then if you're watching the replay, then feel free to drop them in. I always go back after the fact and answer questions. Okay, let me see if I missed anything here. So coming into yoga as well, come into it knowing what you want from it. So like I said previously, some people want to build strength. Other people want to loosen up because they do so much activity like cycling or running, and they just want some relief from the discomfort and tightness in their hips and joints. And some people do it as a meditative practice. Some people do it to unwind as a self-care practice at the end of the day. So what is it that you want from your yoga? And that can help you determine what style of class that you want to teach. But in the end, we all come into it from different angles, different perspectives, and different reasons. So just keep that in mind as well. It may help you decide which style you want to do. And don't worry about doing someone else's yoga. This is your practice. We're all on this individual journey on our own. And that's where practicing from home to start with can be good, as you're kind of treading the waters and experimenting, dipping your toe in and figuring out what you want to do. So that when studios open up and maybe you want to branch out, you build some confidence, you practice some of these foundational poses, then you can go out and get some live instruction and some hands-on adjustment, either through coaching or through having an in-person teaching. And I am the first to say that having an in-person teacher to help train under or learn the foundations from is of utmost importance at some point, so that you know you're in proper alignment and are working the poses in the proper way for your body. Now, if you're doing online classes, another thing to look for is very detailed alignment cues that you can comprehend and implement in your body. So that's another tip for when you're looking for classes. Make sure that the instructor is really diligent with alignment and detail, just to help prevent you from injury and keep your body safe. If you're just joining in, just drop your favorite emoji in the comments so that I know that you're here. And if you have questions, just drop them below as well. Okay, let's move on. So number one was, not all yoga is the same. Don't judge yoga based off of your first class, and just start. Okay, so it's kind of 3 in 1. Number two, I could talk about this all day. So I'm going to jam pack it with actionable steps for you, but it is a lot of information. Okay, number two, it's not always about the pose. So don't force it. And this will come with that ego sense that we just talked about in tip number 1. So if you're forcing a pose, that's your ego trying to get you into a shape that you're actually not ready for, and you could be putting yourself at greater risk of injury. So meet yourself where you're at. Find that edge where you're feeling some sensation. And if your breath starts to get choppy or starts to leave the body, that's your cue to just back out just a little bit so that you can return back to that smooth breath, because that breath is your guide. So again, if you've lost your breath, you've lost the yoga, and you're merely just trying to force yourself into a position that you're not ready for, which is then setting you up for injury. So we're not chasing after a certain shape. Yoga will look different on everybody. And I say this a lot throughout my classes, is it's not always about the pose. It's because everyone will look different, and I can get really deep into this, but for the purpose of today, I'll keep it simple. But our joints and our joint bone structures are all created differently, and our anatomy is all different. So a pigeon pose, for example, on me might look really different on you, but we're still feeling the same sorts of things. So don't judge the pose based off of what the instructor looks like, what the person beside you looks like, or what the girl on Instagram doing some crazy backflip, backbend. A lot of that is contortionism. It's not real yoga. It's for entertainment and aesthetic appeal. So know that as well, is that yoga isn't always what it appears to be on social media. Okay? Work with where you're at. So practicing, and this is where it becomes a practice. So we learn the foundations in yoga, And then we practice them over and over and over and over again. So if you haven't started yoga, just know, like, you might feel kind of awkward and fumbly, and you're just trying to figure it out in the beginning. And then as you start to build some confidence and you build some muscle memory, your body kind of knows what to expect. We're working on that mind to muscle connection. So building that adaptation in the poses, just like we would do in an exercise routine, building endurance and stamina. We do the same in yoga as well. And if you're doing more restorative or more yin type poses, then it becomes a lot of mental work as well, just sitting in those poses and letting the sensations flood the body and being okay with that. Okay, so try not to struggle to settle into pose and stay uncomfortably there. That will compromise the yoga in it all and defeats the whole purpose of the practice. So back out a little bit if you need to. Another thing I want to say is, when you're starting out, to use props. Use whatever you have around you. So if you do not have a yoga strap, if you don't have yoga blocks, don't worry about it for now. They're inexpensive tools that you can invest in, but if you don't have them, don't let that stop you from starting now. You can use, instead of blocks, you can use cushions, you can use like couch pillows. You can use a stool. Like, I use my kid's little potty stool. Sometimes I'll grab that and use that in my fitness and my yoga if I don't have blocks hands near me. So just know you can use a chair. There's tons of chair yoga out there. I'm working on a whole series of it in one of the other companies that I teach yoga for, and people are loving it. So stay tuned for that if chair yoga is something you're into. It's also great for injury prevention and recovery as well. So let's move on here. So number 2 was, it's not about the pose. Don't force it. Work with where you're at. Leave your ego at the door and just meet yourself on the mat where you are. And speaking of mats, you can get super cheap ones out there. Ones that I really recommend are ones that have some grip on them. Manduka and BMAT are some great resources as well. And they have good warranties as well. So something to look into if you're looking to invest. Of course, you can buy very recently priced yoga mats on Amazon. You can get them at department stores, anything like that. Just make sure they're not going to slide around, because the lower quality mats tend to kind of move around and slip, which can also be a form of injury. So we want to avoid that at all cost. Okay, use what you have, and then the accessories out there are pretty affordable. If you're investing in blocks, I suggest cork blocks or solid wood blocks. The hollow synthetic wood blocks are a little bit light, and I find they can kind of topple over, and that goes along with foam blocks. I'm not a huge fan of foam blocks. I know they're very accessible, so if that's what you have, then by all means use them. Okay, so number 2, we're done. Well, we're not done. I could talk all day about it, but we'll move on. Number 3. Okay, this is the number 1 comment that people say to me when I ask them, what is it that is your barrier about starting yoga? And they say, I'm not flexible, which is the biggest myth in the world. Everybody starts yoga when they're not flexible. That's why we do it. That's why we get into it and we make it a practice. You don't have to be flexible. And to be honest, the people who come into the practice super flexible, like those hypermobile people, yoga is actually harder for them, because they have to work at backing out of the poses to build the strength around the joints to protect them from becoming injured. So if you're tight, you're actually at a bit of an advantage, because building flexibility is much easier than building strength. And again, depending on what you want out of your practice, the more often you do the yoga, the quicker and the quicker you'll see your results, and the quicker that you'll progress in the practice. So if you're only doing, a half an hour session once a week, likely is by the time your next half an hour session next week rolls around, you'll probably be back to the same place you were. But if you can work at incorporating even just a few minutes, and I mean a few minutes, like 5 minutes, even start with 3 minutes, do a few stretches, and then slowly build your way up, even if it's to a maximum of 20 minutes, half an hour a day. Okay, if you can work up to that, great. If all you have is 10 minutes, just trust me, 10 minutes, you will feel way better than you did if you didn't do it at all. So don't go in with that all or nothing mentality. A few minutes a day is all that you need. And you can do it on a quick break while you're watching TV, in bed even. I just posted a yoga video last week. It was a bedtime routine, and I do that practice in my bed, in my pajamas, and the last thing I do is take out my earbuds, throw them on the bedside table, and I go to sleep. Pull the covers up, done. So you can do yoga almost anywhere that suits your needs. Okay, so start small. You don't have to be flexible. You will gain strength. It's really about making you healthier, fitter, stronger, better performance in all aspects of your life. But yoga also has way more underlying benefits than just flexibility and strength. Okay, and some of those benefits are the cardiorespiratory health, immune function, as we're wringing out the toxins, detoxifying all the internal, deep internal organs with the movements that we're doing, as well as with the breath, cleansing out those internal organs. It lowers blood pressure, it lowers blood sugars, and it has been shown to release those positive, happy endorphins. So we end up feeling happier and lighter and better within our own bodies. And when we feel better within our own bodies, which is such a subjective feeling, then we tend to be able to show up more for those who need us the most. Okay, yoga also boosts memory because it's so focused, right? So twists are really good. Twists and balancing poses are really, really great for mental clarity and sharpness because we have to focus so much on the task at hand. Because if the mind starts to wander, then what? We fall out of the pose. So deep, deep focus. So really good for mental sharpness as well. So yoga really does do your body good. Number 4, it's not just physical. This is an opportunity to go inward, and you may have heard the term moving meditation. So yoga can be a form of just that decompression. Just shove the thoughts out of your mind for a few minutes, or even if it's a full-length practice, and just delve into what you're feeling, the body awareness and the breath and the mental aspect of it. What are you getting out of it? It helps you develop the mindfulness and also coping skills. So the more that we learn about the breath and the more that we become more attuned to the breath, then the more that we can be aware of what the breath is telling us when we're off of the mat in our everyday life. So when a stressful situation hits, or when emotion hits, or whatever life's going to throw at you, you'll be able to cope and deal with that that charged emotion that's coming up way easier if you are paying attention to what your breath is telling you. Again, it kind of neutralizes out those charged feelings of anxiety, of frustration, of anger. Rather than being polarized and going from one direction to the other. And we talked about this a few weeks ago in my weekly newsletter that I sent out. You become a lot more balanced with how you react to circumstances or situations that come up. And that's all a scientifically proven thing with yoga. So just take note of it. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything here. So let's move on to number 5. So number 4 was it's not just physical. So lots of other benefits that you're going to get from practice. And maybe that's why you want to incorporate a yoga practice, is to get that non-physical benefit, but more the mental clarity from it. Okay, so number 5 is yoga as a practice. And this kind of interweaves through what we've talked about earlier, but it's not about nailing down the pose. It's really about stepping on your mat. It's a discipline, stepping on your mat every day, even if you don't want to, because you might hit points, and you probably will, just like you might with exercise. You don't always want to, but we got to shove those feelings aside, get over it, step on the mat and do the work. And again, even if you're doing it for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll notice after that 10 minutes, you'll never regret, stepping on the mat. So it is a practice, and it took me a long time to commit and really adopt this mindset, because yoga some people can get kind of addicted to it, because it does make you feel a certain way that any other practice doesn't make you feel. So knowing that, putting that ego aside and focusing with where you're at, don't force it. This is a practice. If your goal is to master lotus pose, don't force yourself into it. This is going to take years, and the progress is subtle. So don't expect overnight massive results. Although a lot of people, even in the Genevieve at Home Yoga and Fitness Facebook group, have been DMing me and posting in the group saying what great benefits they're noticing even after just 10 minutes a day. So that's all on a subtle level, but the physical aspects, it takes time to build that up. So keep that in mind. You're not going to be perfect right off the bat, and it's not about perfectionism. A successful yoga practice takes into account what your body needs at that particular time. So whether it's a deep, challenging stretch assisted by an instructor, having that extra traction, or maybe it's just gaining a few quiet moments of your breath. When you're off your mat in your kitchen and your family's all in your head, that's practicing yoga too, off the mat. It's not always about on the mat. And what we learn on the mat is what we take off the mat. And that's where the real yoga is how do we cope and deal with situations. Okay, so next one is yoga is personal. So what works for me may not work for you. And what I look like in a pose may not be what you look like in a pose. But what are we both getting from it? Maybe along the same path. So we are universal. We are all one. That's a big concept in yoga. And we are all made up of these vibrational, energetic molecules. So we all look different, but we're working towards that same feeling within ourselves. And whether that's pain relief, whether it's a quieter mind, whether it's self-care, maybe it's to have fun and teach our kids the importance of moving our bodies in healthy ways and learning body awareness and self-regulation techniques. These are all good things that come of yoga, and we all come into it from a bit of a different angle, and that's okay. This is really about finding what works for you in the pose, what the pose feels like for you. As long as you're following safe alignment cues, that's really the important thing. So I'll always come back to that alignment piece. Whew. All right, I could just talk about this stuff forever. I love it. So let's do a quick little recap here. So the 6 tips for when you're starting out a yoga journey. Things to keep in mind is not all yoga is the same. So again, dabble with the different types. Try a few different classes, try a few different instructors, and see how you feel. Starting it at home just with some gentle stretches is a great place. If you're feeling kind of low confidence and awkward in it, then you can do it in the comfort of your own home without having, feeling that judgment aspect of it, which is, again, your ego. It's all about the ego always is seeping in there. Number 2, it's not about the pose. Don't force it. So if you lose the breath, you've lost the pose. Building tension within a pose also takes the yoga out of it. So find your edge and then back off slightly so that you can hold the pose for a few breaths in whatever modification you're at. Okay. And again, That's another point. Work with where you're at, use props if you need them, and modify if you need to. And really, modifications are the most advanced thing, because that's getting over that ego and meeting your body with where you're at if you're needing to modify. Number 3 was, you don't have to be flexible to do yoga. Yay, that's great news, right? Because everyone thinks they have to be flexible to do yoga, but you don't have to be flexible to do yoga. And you don't have to be strong to do yoga. So if you're super flexible and you really need to work on strength, then the practice will benefit you in that sense. So the practice will meet you with where you are at and with whatever your body needs. You may notice, if you need to lose a few pounds, yoga can help with that. If you need to gain weight, yoga can help with that. It's very balancing for the hormones. So it's kind of a magical type of practice, and gives our body whatever we need from it. Number 4, is it's not just physical. So lots of mental benefits and clarity, memory boosting, cardiorespiratory, immune function. Like, the benefits are just endless. Yoga is a practice. That was number 5. So a few minutes a day is better than one big chunk of time at the end of the week on a weekend. So if you can get into the habit of doing a few minutes of yoga, even a few stretches strung together, okay, you can call that yoga, right? You pick some foundational poses or follow a short sequence, and just get your movement in, and just notice how you feel. Notice where you feel a bit more free and limber. And number 6 is, yoga is personal. So everyone comes at it from a bit of a different angle and for different reasons. And we just meet each other with where we are, and we practice, we breathe, and it's really about finding that journey for you. Okay. So I will post in the comments below one of my favorite yoga classes for beginners, and I have you guys in mind. I've just created a new yoga for beginners class, and it's all about the basics. It's starting right at the very beginning. So I'll walk you through a nice yoga class. I just have to get it edited and up, so that'll be up, and then either the next yoga class I post or the one after that. So keep an eye on that. And just try things. You have to start. You got to start somewhere, right? And you can even journal about how you're feeling afterwards, things that you're working through. That will help just to kind of clear out some of that chatter in your mind as well, just by getting your thoughts out on paper. Or also post in the Facebook group, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. So how you can get started is, make sure you're picking a time and a place. So scope out your house, find a little area that you can do your practice in. It can be right beside your bed. I've even done it in my closet if I have company around. My living room is my main practice area, right in the middle of the house. That's where I practice. But it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be a big shrine or anything like that. It's just wherever you have the space. And if you don't have a mat, that's fine. Do it on carpet or do it on the hardwood. It's a bit more stickier on like a hard surface. And just practice there. Just do it. Just get it in, even if it's just a few poses a day. If you need ideas, post in the Facebook group. I'm happy to help you along with that. So I'd love to know what your biggest takeaways were. I'd love to know if maybe I busted some myths that you were thinking you needed or didn't need for starting out your yoga practice. So do me a favor and just comment below the video what your biggest takeaway was, and what action are you going to take to start a practice? What are you going to do to get that, make that first step, or what will you do to stay consistent with the practice if maybe you've tried yoga and you just haven't stayed consistent with it? What are some things that you can do, or what videos are you going to try to keep yourself on the bandwagon? Let me know the benefits you feel, and I just can't wait to hear your opinions, and I'll get right back to you as well. I'll comment back. Now, every week I do post all of my new videos, including all of the new yoga videos that I upload to YouTube. I send out a weekly update. It's a newsletter. So if you're not on my email list and you'd like to get those updates so that you know about all the new releases coming out and new events that I'm offering, then I will post the email link in the comments below so that you can get on that list. It's definitely one you want to get on, because with Facebook algorithms, they can sometimes not show you things that people post. So I don't want you to miss anything. So get on the list. It's guaranteed. It goes out every weekend. So it's some good reading you can do while you're having your morning coffee or tea. And we'll go from there. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. If you have questions, then please comment below again. And to my newbie yogi friends, I hope that this helped. I hope this gave you a little bit of direction about what to expect when you're first starting out, and my biggest tips. And a lot of them are ones that are kind of those myth busters about those preconceived ideas of what you need to be or not need to be when you come into the practice. Okay, it can be modified for anyone, and it can meet you with any aspect of life that you're at right now, and for whatever reason why you're coming into it. Okay. Well, I love you all. If you're not part of the Genevieve at Home Facebook group, I will post the link below so that you can start getting involved with us, where we offer support and guidance and help propel you to the next level in your fitness and yoga journey. Okay. For now, bye-bye.